everybody thought that the savior was going to be a military leader.
Figure, yeah.
He was going to be like David. It was going to be the new David. And, that's what they thought. The Sicario, they were all mad when
But
they
who
found out.
came? It was
Prince
a
of
humble
Peace.
man
Prince of
who just
Peace.
had dinner with people,
Yeah.
who invited
Fellowship.
himself over to people's houses,
Yeah.
who just went over the whole countryside, just getting to know individuals, calling them out of trees, lifting them up off the ground, and saying, hey, can I dine with you?
And that's what I was getting at is that, we think that might makes right all the time, is that it has to be through violence. But we see a lot of times, what is the martial art that's Aikido, where you use somebody's own force against them as they're coming in, like the Steven Seagal uses that, like all above the law. He's like a Aikido like master or whatever.
Who's mightier than God? And yet look at his example.
Yeah.
He sheds all that and becomes a lamb. He becomes a baby.
It's counterintuitive.
We're about to celebrate Christmas in a couple weeks.
It's counterintuitive to us. That's why.
The Almighty, the All-Powerful becomes a baby. Yeah. And it's in that humility. It's like, I mentioned forgiveness and peace and being able to set humility, to be able to set aside ourselves and say, how can we work for something better? How can we work for something that's actually good and true and beautiful?
It takes saints.
It takes saints, but it also takes saints and takes an individual who's able to say, the ideas that I hold maybe aren't worth holding.
Yeah.
The beliefs that I have
that's true humility.
Maybe aren't worth believing.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous of us not to have that stance.
Because it hurts. It hurts to let go of things that we believe in, that we hold on to, because you have to change. It takes a lot of humility and a lot of soul searching to do those things. But that's the saying, is that we have to let our ideas die so that we don't die. That if it's something that we're holding on to, this is where ideology comes in, and these bad ideas, like, well, that's not true. That's not how it is. But some people, especially when we break these divisions and these lines, whether that's politics or, geopolitical type stuff, is that you're so entrenched in these ideas that you can't even question them. There's no having a conversation, because this is it, no matter what. I believe this because this party I'm part of or this group I'm in, this is what we believe no matter what. And sometimes those ideas are false. They're not true about what they think about other people. Like if we had, Palestinians and Israelites sit next to each other and have a dinner table fellowship, they see that, hey, you know what? I'm a dad, you're a dad. We have a lot more in common than we don't. And that goes within our Christian brothers and sisters, our Protestant brothers and sisters. Like, we agree on 90% of the stuff, but all we focus on are our differences. And I think that's part of it. It's too much of, look at you, you're different than me. Because of this one thing, we can't get along. Instead of saying, you know what, there's maybe a reason there. I don't understand it, but I want to get to know you. And that takes listening, and that takes humility. And that's what we're lacking in everything. It's just, that's especially with this generation today, that all the statistics are in, that they just want to be heard. And people mistake listening with agreeing. If I listen to your point, which I am, and you're listening to me, doesn't mean I agree with you, but I'm hearing you out because I respect you and I'm listening, but it doesn't mean I'm agreeing with you. But to take time to stop and listen and to hear you out, that's a sign of respect. But it matters, because but the young people today, especially.
When's the last time you saw somebody on TV, on the news, and on social media say, oh, my bad. Actually, that's what you just said is right. I'm going to change the way I think.
Never.
When does that happen?
Especially on social media.
It doesn't get clicks.
No.
It doesn't get likes. No. It doesn't get retweeted or re-X'd or whatever. But that's what's missing, and that's what's going to take.
Yeah.
And that's why freedom of speech is so important.
Yes.
You can't, and that's, again, going back to the founding principles of this country are so important, and they are sacred, not in the religious sense, but they are sacred in that they deserve to be preserved and passed on. Freedom of speech, the ability for us to share our ideas and to let them see the light of day so that they can be engaged, so they can be heard, dissected, picked apart, and then hopefully developed, is so important. Yeah. But what we're seeing is this whole cancel culture and this whole, you can't say certain things, and you can't, for fear of retribution or for fear of ostracization. That can't exist if we want to develop and continue to grow in a just and civil society.
And I think if we bring it home, is that
it actually leads to more in the attempt, whether, let's say it's a genuine attempt, for people who want to censor speech. Let's say they're being genuine. They think speech is actually violence.
Yeah.
in doing that, which you're doing, because communication is what it is, we can find groups of people who are like-minded with us. You're just creating echo chambers for people to feed on each other and to let bad ideas, right? Because you're not bringing in light, you're hiding it under a basket. You're letting those bad ideas just fester.
Yeah.
And then people eventually act out on those ideas. They want to see those ideas become reality.
Well,
And so you're grouping, you're siloing people together who might think a certain way. They might start acting a certain way. They want to organize it according to those beliefs. When this might be scarier, but I think the more fruitful way is bring those opinions, because those opinions are part of who you are and how you think, to the public square and let them be engaged.
Yeah.
And have the humility to say, I was right, I was wrong. I'm going to see things differently. Because if you do that, then the person you're engaging with also has the freedom to say, you know, if this person's being honest with me, I'm going to be honest with him. I'm going to be able to change my mind as well.
Yeah.
Right? If I were to sitting across from you and you were to come up to me and say, you know what, Khalil, you really helped me see something differently. Thank you.
Yeah.
You just gave me the freedom to do the same thing. Why double down when this person is being so honest? When this person's open to development and growth?
It's hard. People
to say I have the definition of what truth and goodness is, and, you know, to say my opinion is fact, that's the most ignorant thing I think you could do.
Well, I think a lot of it too, like how you touched on, if speech is violence, then there's only one alternative. That if someone doesn't agree with you, is to use violence, because it is violence. So there's nothing left. If you don't, you talk, and then if you don't talk, then you shout. And people shout only because they don't feel like they're being listened to.
Yeah.
And if words are violence, then anything can be attributed to hitting or to violence, and that just goes with our rhetoric of our words. It's like everything's like, it's a war on free speech. It's a war on, everything's like war. It's everything. Even the words that we're using are loaded, So it's like, yeah, the freedom of speech is important to have those dialogues. But unfortunately, most of the only conversations taking place are not at a table. It's not in the public square. It's in comment boxes.
That's a great point. The words we're using are loaded these days, and we're using loaded words. It's diminishing the weight that those words have, so that when we come to use them in the right context,
they don't mean it.
They no longer have the same force or effect.
Yeah, at least that's, but there's no difference of freedom of speech than freedom of thought. That's how we think. If you're thinking to yourself, do you really establish an idea until you really verbalize it to your wife or someone else? We're talking this out. Yeah, I thought about a lot of these things, but how I'm articulating it, and then writing is even more, because you literally, you're editing and you're writing it down. You're trying to organize your thoughts and sentences and paragraphs. There's nothing different than thinking. So no freedom of speech means you're not free to think at all. And that's how we live through the world, is through thinking, and especially bringing it to our Catholic faith, is that a lot of it is thinking. It's like, our faith is not an either or, it's a both and. It's Republicans and Democrats. It's we're pro-life, but we're also for immigration reform. We're also for the environment, but we're also pro-life. It's not an either or faith, it's a both and. And unfortunately, those categories are all separated onto two different political parties.
Yeah.
And our faith is bigger than political parties. There is no lines. It's both and. It's not an either or. And if we can't come together and have conversations about, hey, we should do this, and then talk back and forth. If it's just drawing lines, let's get back to the beginning, drawing lines in the sand. Well, I'm in this political party, you believe this, I believe this, but this one's more Catholic and this one's not Catholic, or it's both Catholic. It's like our faith is called to something bigger, to have that dialogue and that tension in between both. It's not we're to be one or the other. It's the both and. That's all of our faith about everything, from faith in science, faith in reason, anything that we have. It's like subsidiarity and solidarity. It's all these things in tension, but it takes dialogue of freedom of speech. Because if not, how do you negotiate? Well, okay, take care of everybody across the world, have solidarity, but we're also supposed to start closest to home. Like, well, those two things seem like that's a paradoxical. It seems like they're contradictory, but they're not.
When we're not advocating for the existence of a utopia.
No.
That'll never happen. We live in a fallen world. We're a fallen people. Yeah. We will continue to fall and stumble. But to what measure are we able to pick each other up? Yeah. Not just pick ourselves up. That's important to pick yourself up. But to what measure are we willing to pick ourselves up? That'll determine the health of our communities. That'll determine the health of our families. That'll determine the health of everything. It's the measure with which we're willing to pick each other up. We bring it back to our Lord. We bring it back to Jesus. He tells us to love our neighbors and to pray for those who persecute us. The more we can love each other, the more we can hear and see each other, the more we engage each other, the more we're willing to grow as a product of that engagement.
Boom.
The larger that community becomes, the more receptive to each other that we become, and the smaller that group that want to persecute. Because again, there's always going to be bad people that want to do bad things. The smaller they become, the easier it is for us to identify who they are, and the quicker it is for us to cut them off at the head.
Yeah.
But when everything's chaos for chaos's sake, I mean, you look at, dude, it's like you can't be disconnected from it. But you look at social media, just the way it's set up. Most people get their news now through social media. Most people get their just their everything through social media. It's the negatives. I mean, you tell me all the time, like, what gets clicks? It's the don't do this, or I did this, or I. Yeah. It's always the negatives. That what comments get the most views? It's the negative comments, and it's built that way. And so when we're talking about just seeing each other for who we are and engaging each other as individuals with love and charity and respect, that's got to be the way that things gain traction. Yeah. Because I bet you there's going to be a lot of people, and by a lot, maybe 10, that watch this.
Let's hope not.
Yeah.
Tell your friends, share, subscribe.
Yeah, share, like, subscribe. Keep the conversation moving. But there's going to be people that are going to watch this and say, like, hey, these guys are idiots. They have no idea what they're talking about. Yeah. But, okay, yeah, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But
well, I think
engage the idea. Have a conversation.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So practically, so how can we take peace to our houses and with ourselves, with our neighbors? It's maybe start by, okay, obviously prayer. We're going to pray more. We should be praying. Like you said, even pray for your enemies.